Real Madrid have just beaten Liverpool 1-0 to go through to the quarterfinals of the Champions League, 6-2 on aggregate. So Liverpool came into this game needing to win it by 3 goals or more, and Jurgen Klopp put out a very attacking team that, in principle, should have been able to achieve their objectives on the night. But they really struggled to get a hold of the game, and it was mostly due to the difference in class between the two midfields. If you look at both teams on paper, you have 2 of the best goalkeepers in the world playing in net in Alisson and Courtois. You have 2 very good defenses playing on both sides as well, and you have arguably 2 good sets of attackers as well. But the game was won and lost in midfield because Modric, Kroos, and Camavinga were miles better than Fabinho, Milner, plus 1 of Gakpo or Jota. So there are lots of talking points to get through, starting with the tactical battle between Klopp and Ancelotti. And as always, please drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy. And don't forget to turn on all notifications to never miss out on content just like this. So I want to kick things off by briefly explaining Klopp's style of play and game plan because it'll help us understand exactly what Real Madrid did well today to nullify Liverpool. The most distinct feature of Jurgen Klopp's brand of football has been the counter-pressing, heavy metal football that Premier League fans have seen over the last 7 or 8 seasons. It relies on making the pitch as big as possible when in possession by maximizing spaces between your players within every line of your team. So in the defensive line, with your center backs splitting as much as possible, and your fullbacks being on the touchline on each side so that there's more space for the goalkeeper to step out and act as an extra outfielder. In the midfield, by having the CDM central in line with the fullbacks in front of the center backs, and also the 2 8s holding further up in the half spaces on both sides. And the wingers will play narrow or wide depending on the support provided by the midfielders in behind them. The goal here is to increase the distances that oppositions have to cover when defending, and as a result give your players more time and space to operate on the ball. The counter-pressing begins when teams lose the ball, and it relies on your players being able to react quicker defensively than the opponents can offensively. So basically, if Liverpool loses the ball in the final third, the player closest to the ball will aggressively engage the ball carrier immediately. So if Trent plays an early ball into the box towards Militao, and Militao wins the aerial duel to retain possession, you'll see Jota press Militao immediately from this angle here. And then the other 3 to 4 Liverpool players will take up positions around the ball carrier to either man-mark Madrid players or cut the passing lanes between them to intercept the ball. So you might have Jota pressing Militao, like I said, to cut the pass angle to Rudiger, and then Nunez, Milner, and Fabinho will mark Carvajal, Modric, and Camavinga to press them if the ball goes anywhere near them. So this basically forces Militao to either turn and play it back to Courtois, where mistakes can happen in that scenario, or he has to play the ball over the top into the front 3, where Liverpool should be able to win the aerial duels against Benzema, Valverde, or Vini Jr. So the goal here is to deny opponents space by pressing high up the pitch and win possession as soon as possible through tackles, interceptions, and individual duels. In principle, you can beat this counter-press by having 3 key qualities as a team. 1, your defenders and midfielders need to be good on the ball in tight spaces. This means both dribbling and passing to get out of there. 2, your defenders and midfielders need to have good movement off the ball to provide favorable passing angles to the ball carrier. And 3, teams need to be good at counterattacking, because when counterpressing occurs high up the pitch, you have a lot of space in behind to get into. So getting the ball up the pitch as fast as possible after beating that counterpress is really key to beating this system. And if you think about this Real Madrid side, they are good at all 3 of those things. Rudiger, Militao, Nacho, and Carvajal in defense, Modric, Kroos, and Camavinga in midfield. They're all great on the ball in tight spaces, and the midfielders in particular are great at dropping deep in possession when the defense is getting pressed to offer them an outball. And of course, Vinicius Jr. and Benzema are elite at getting into the opposition box within a few passes and touches. So despite Liverpool's efforts to press high up the pitch, they weren't really able to force any defensive errors out of Madrid, and in fact, Madrid made them look vulnerable on the counterattack by creating several chances on the break in this game. So now that we have an understanding of overall strategy at a high level, let's take a look at how both teams set up in and out of possession. So Madrid started in a 4-3-3 but played a 3-4-3 in possession that looked like this. In this shape, you had Benzema through the middle, Vini and Valverde on either flanks, then 4 behind them with Camavinga playing more centrally and a little deeper than Modric was playing. And Modric was operating more in the half spaces on both sides, and they were both getting forward at times. So these 2 were kind of box-to-box midfielders. Then you had Nacho Fernandez and Dani Carvajal playing as wingbacks next to them, constantly getting forward to cause problems for both Trent on the left and Robertson on the right. And then you had Cruz, the third midfielder, actually dropping in between the two center backs to build out the play from the back. One particular in-game tactic that Ancelotti deployed was to have Valverde invert and drop into midfield on the inside spaces here to allow Carvajal to overlap and get onto the wing. This movement by Valverde and Carvajal consistently pulled Robertson out of position to track Valverde in midfield, which meant either Milner or Van Dijk had to come over to mark Carvajal in this area here. And this in turn meant that Modric had more space to advance centrally or on the inside spaces here and link up with Benzema and Camavinga in this pocket in midfield. And if Robertson tried to stay back and mark Carvajal, it pulled Milner and Núñez towards Valverde, which again created more spaces centrally, a little bit deeper for Madrid. But the main benefit of the second option was that Liverpool's attack was automatically nullified because Núñez had to stay deeper. So this overall dynamic created by Ancelotti and Madrid on Madrid's right-hand side completely nullified Liverpool's attack from the left, and it's why Núñez, Milner, and Robertson weren't a threat today going forward. Now, Madrid usually favor attacks down their left-hand side because of how good Vini Jr. is, and you saw Benzema operating in this half space a lot to offer support to Vini. And given that Hakpo was often part of the attack, Trent, Konate, and Fabinho were often left to handle these two in particular when Madrid were in transition. And when the ball was on Madrid's left, you had Modric and Camavinga also join this space to create overloads in these areas. And then you had Vini cutting into the edge of the box and Nacho offering support on the overlap. And occasionally when Vini would go on the outside, Fernandes would underlap and stay on the edge of the box with Benzema inside the box and Modric on the other side. And obviously Valverde joining in on the far post. Now that we understand Madrid's tactics, I have two clips here that'll show you guys exactly how effective Madrid were in possession and how they beat the counter-press by Liverpool. In our first clip, we start with Cruz trying to switch the play to Vini on the left-hand side here. As we play along, we see the pass getting intercepted by Trent, and he knocks it into this area where you'd think Salah could get at the end of it. But the loose ball ends up being a little bit further forward than Salah expects, and it lands straight to Rudiger's feet. And now I want you guys to notice Trent and Gakpo's positioning as Rudiger moves forward with this ball. So as Rudiger moves to the left, Gakpo starts to press him because he's the ball carrier, as we discussed earlier in the gegenpress system. And we have Trent getting closer to Vini in an effort to press him if the ball is played inside here. Now, if we assess Rudiger's options further, we see that the pass back to Cruz or Nacho is a bad one because there's two Liverpool players here who can press them immediately. So the only logical pass is out to Camavinga here, who's in a little bit of space. So Rudiger plays it to Camavinga, which immediately triggers the press by Jota, as you see him running towards him here. And as we pause it here, look at how each Liverpool player is either cutting off a passing angle or man-marking a Madrid player. So Camavinga's options are really only to play it back to Rudiger here so that he can get him out of trouble, maybe switch the play to the other side or play it back to Courtois for safety. But Camavinga decides to turn inside to face his own goal this way, and that immediately triggers another press by Salah and Jota to cover off this passing angle into these two players here. But the mistake these guys make is that by doing that, they take the pressure off of these two, and Camavinga can fire an easy pass into Cruz, who lays it off to Nacho, and then Nacho can easily play it back to Courtois. Now you might be wondering what was so special about that clip, and you're right to wonder because there was nothing special. The point of the gegenpress is not just to win the ball back by closing off space, it's also to put pressure on the opponent to force a mistake out of them. And with Rudiger so far out of position in this area here, if Camavinga, Cruz, or Nacho lose the ball in this type of area, Liverpool are 2v1 or 3v2 on goal. And early in the second half, conceding from a moment like this could be huge in a tie like this. But the Madrid players show their composure on the ball in tight spaces and retain possession. In this clip, we start with Militao playing the ball out to Carvajal on the right back spot. As he receives it, we see Modric operating in the half space between Milner and Van Dijk, and Camavinga is sitting a little bit deeper in this area here like we talked about earlier, and Valverde is in a starting position on the right wing, but I want you guys to pay attention to his movement as we play this clip. As Carvajal gets forward, we see Valverde holding back a little to create separation from Robertson, and Modric does the same thing by bending his run this way so that Van Dijk is left a few yards ahead of him. Carvajal fires the ball into Modric and makes an off-the-ball run on the inside to get separation from Núñez and get the ball back from Modric. As soon as he gets it, he lays it off first time to Camavinga, who's ready to play it first time into Valverde, and Madrid have effectively beaten the Liverpool press in their own half. Now let's digest what happened here in about 7 in-game seconds. Madrid have beaten the press from 5 Liverpool players, the 5 active players that we see here, And 3 of the 4 Madrid players here have only touched the ball once, with only Carvajal having 2 touches. If at any point during this play Madrid lose the ball, Liverpool will be straight through on the counter-attack with a numerical advantage because Nacho is so far out of position in midfield. In both clips that we've seen so far, Madrid have met 2 out of the 3 criteria that I described earlier that are needed to beat the gegenpress, and one clip was on the left side of defense with the left-sided midfielders and defenders, and this one is on the right side with the right-sided defenders and midfielders. They're just all so composed on the ball, they don't make mistakes. And off-the-ball movement is drilled into them so well that at least one teammate is always open to them in close range. And if you watch the whole game, the third criteria to beat the gegenpress, which is counterattacking, was evident as well, as Madrid were in behind the Liverpool defense time and time again with the ball over the top to Vini Jr. on the left-hand side. Madrid are just too good to get beaten 3-0 at home, man, and Liverpool had to find out the hard way. Now that we know what Madrid did really well in this game, let's briefly discuss what went wrong for Klopp before we wrap up the video. So Liverpool started in a 4-3-3 but played a 2-2-4-2 in possession, which is a very attacking formation with Salah and Núñez playing narrow as inside forwards in these areas, Jota dropping into the hole playing next to Hakpo in these central areas, and Trent and Robertson providing the width in that line by staying on the touchline. And behind them you had the double pivot of Fabinho and Milner, and Konate and Van Dijk dealing with Benzema by themselves. Now if everything went to plan, Liverpool would have had 2 very attacking triangles in these areas to cut through the Madrid defense and create lots of chances to hopefully win this game by 3 goals or more. But the problem was getting the ball up the pitch into these areas fast enough, because every time they tried to do anything from either side, the Madrid defense just got set very easily. They got into their shape because there was a lot of time. And that problem was mainly created by Madrid's willingness to defend with 8, right? Because Valverde was often dropping very deep, playing almost as the second right back, as Carvajal would go very narrow and Valverde would occupy this position. And that would force someone like Milner to come out and help the attack, right? Either narrow in these areas or even wide in these areas as Jota stays more central. And now the problem you have is that Vini Jr. and Benzema are high up the pitch with no defensive responsibilities and just 3 Liverpool players left to defend them. So constantly there was this ball out to the back into Vini Jr. and he would get into this area in behind Trent, and only Konate or maybe Fabinho would come in to help Konate. For the most part, it was Konate versus Vini. And so for Liverpool to have a chance to win this game, they had to pack the midfield and hope that the numbers would make up for the lack of quality that they had in that area. But not only is the midfield the weakest area in their squad, it's also where they have the most injuries right now. Both Thiago and Bajcetic are out till early April, and Henderson was out for a few days with illness. So in some ways, there was never really a chance for Liverpool to turn things around in this tie. Get in the comments below with your thoughts on the game. Who was your man of the match? For me, it was Camavinga because he looked very, very composed on the ball and was in the right place at the right time almost throughout the game. Thank you guys for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and don't forget to turn on your bell notifications to never miss out on content just like this.